Managers of Reddit, what is the most unprofessional thing an employee has done that resulted in an immediate termination? I had an employee who got drunk on her lunch break, flipped her car, went to jail, mugshot with our company logo on her shirt. Perfect. Edit. Everyone is asking, our lunch break is 1 hour. Many employees leave to go out to eat. Potentially there were other substances involved. I was a business partner, but wasn't involved in the day-to-day management or anything much anymore. Started another venture. I'm a big rough looking black guy, which is important for the story. I can't remember the reason, but I needed to sign some paperwork, and it had to happen within the hour. I think it had to do with a big client and some type of equity in their business in exchange for service. So I left the gym and drove straight to the office. I was showered and clean, but in casual clothing, jeans and a t-shirt. When I arrived, the receptionist said very loudly, "Can I help you?" There was already something off with her tone, but I didn't really care. I simply said, "Yes, I'd like to see Mr. Hampton. He's expecting me." I should have said my name, which she'd have maybe recognized, but I don't know why I didn't or she didn't ask. She didn't pull up a schedule, ask on the intercom, call his line or anything. She then laughed and said, "Mr. Hampton doesn't take walk-ins, sir." This alone wouldn't be a big deal, even though I think the laugh is rude. She then turned her chair away from me with her back facing me. I said, "Excuse me," and she put headphones in. There was one other guy waiting to see our office manager for a job as a courier, and he was kind of snickering and amused. It was embarrassing and unacceptable. I then raised my voice and said, "I need to see Mr. Hampton and I'm going ahead." As I said, "He's expecting me." She just laughed, but wouldn't buzz me in. It's a set of office suites, and to get to what we call the bullpen you have to be buzzed in. I don't know if she saw me through the glass, but the office manager ran up and buzzed me in, and greeted me by name. The receptionist went white as a sheet. I could tell she was shitting bricks. I signed the papers and let my partner know what had happened. He walked out with me, and just told her to pack her bags. Legitimately fired on the spot. When I look back, I feel kind of bad for her, but it was so ridiculous. There's no reason to treat anyone that way. A client could have turned up underdressed as well. Absolute madness. Guy had a crush on a female co-worker. He passed her a note at work one day, with a gob of hand lotion inside it, and the words, "I got really excited thinking about you earlier." Girl freaked out. Went to management. Guy got escorted out. I had an officer under me. He was reported in a tree. I went to investigate the last place he was seen. He was still there, attempting to pepper spray birds. I wish I could have made that up. Edit. Fired immediately. One of our delivery drivers was supposed to be training a new employee, basically driving around and introduce them to routes and customers, and that type of thing. Well, he told the new driver to just drop him off at the park down the street, and when my boss drives the 15 seconds to the park, he was smoking crack with bums. Literally smoking crack cocaine with bums at the park. Edit. So of course the dude got fired. Then maybe a month later, we get a call from a customer saying that he was walking in the middle of a busy intersection with our company's shirt on. He slashed my tire after I told him to go work instead of sitting in the break room. He obviously didn't want to go to work, so I think you did him a favor. My husband is a manager, and his employee somehow had another employee's ID, and then stole that person's check and cashed it. Caught it all on camera. She still denied it. I work in pizza delivery, and we had a guy back in the day, fellow manager, who tried to shut down the store 5 hours before the time that corporate set for us to close. He clocked every person out and sent them home, and then just refused to take the phone calls or anything like that. He was fired immediately after our boss found out, and he even tried to come into work the next day like everything was fine. Was going over security footage. Saw an employee that didn't want to sign their contract, take it, sign it, stick it down the front of his pants, and wipe it around on his junk, then stick it in the secretary's inbox. Contract was burned, inbox was disinfected, employee was fired. I had to send a guy to a remote gas/petroleum refinery site for an inspection. Previously he had been reliable on most occasions. However, on this occasion he never showed up for the pre-drug/alcohol test the day before he had to fly out, and gave me a long-winded excuse, basically blaming his car troubles. At this point I would have gone myself to site, however I was just back from a bone graft to my collarbone, so I wasn't going anywhere. The director made the final decision to send him anyway against my recommendations. We flew him to site to do his on-site induction, where he would do the DNA test anyway. Partway through his induction he got up and left. I called him that night, but never got an answer, so I checked with his accommodation, and the hotel claimed he had checked in within the last half hour. I was just glad nothing major had happened. Next morning I speak to the client, and the client informs me that the staff member apologized for leaving abruptly and had to rush off and deal with some personal issues. I don't press it any longer. 2 hours goes by, and I get a call from the client stating that they've kicked him off site because they've found him asleep on site, and when they woke him he became extremely aggressive. The client is furious about this, and says we're a cowboy of an operation for sending someone like this, and to fly someone up the next day to finish the job. That night we have a conference call with the client stating that we're no longer going to be working for them due to this issue, costing our company roughly $1 million from the loss of the contract. We bring him the day after he flies back to ask about his actions. I'm supposed to head this up and get his side of the story, except before we even get into really discussing things, my director asks, if we are to drug test you today, would you fail? He answers, yes, and he was told he's being terminated instantly. He starts yelling at the top of his lungs and blaming his actions on everyone else. I told him he needs to leave straight away, or police will get called. He does. He leaves. Then for the next month our admin receive emails about how I'm terrible at my job, and I should be fired for not listening to his problems, which he had never spoken to me about. So yeah, that was the day I fired my brother and found out he was addicted to meth. Edit. There was a lot going on post his termination. Me and my dad combined to pay for rehab costs. He never stayed both times he was sent. Then there was physical threats of violence to my mom and my family for not giving him money. That is where I cut contact. Every update since then has been from my dad. He hasn't seen my mom. He's working during the day and studying at night. I hope this time he can do well. As for services that our employer offered, previously he had been given 8 for counseling due to depression. Out of those 12 sessions, he had gone to 3. The situation gave me severe anxiety and depression. You can blame the twist due to the fact I've just watched season 1 and 2 of Black Mirror over the past few nights. Had an employee pass out in his truck in a customer's driveway. Customer called me to report. Said employee had a glass pipe on his chest. Luckily guy decides to call me instead of the sheriff. Employee was picked up and brought back to shop. When asked what was going on, he stated, I was on break. It wasn't weed, it was just spice. Sorry bud, I don't think this is gonna work out. Rubbing a pregnant co-worker's belly 3 times after being asked to stop, and then asking her if her husband was good at the X. I fired him, and he asked if we could still be friends. No. He then tried to file for unemployment after only working there for 3 weeks, part-time. I'm not the manager involved, but I think this fits the bill. A co-worker of mine who was a little bit too into his car, got snapped doing twice the speed limit. Instead of pulling over for the patrol car behind him, he decided to run for it. He led a police chase to the office, and shook them off by hiding in the underground parking. The GM watched it happen from his office. He took the lift down, found co-worker's car, and told him not to bother getting out. But did it clear his wanted level? Oh man. My high school buddy ended up being pretty successful and starting his own business. A girl who'd bullied him in middle school applied for a job at the 20-ish person business. I knew them both in high school, their circles never overlapped, but she remained in her awful judgmental ways. So she applied to this job and was meeting with the owner. My friend ended up getting to the front of the building at the same time she did. He figured he'd give her a chance, because people change, yada yada. He's more optimistic than me. Well, She assumed he was applying for the job too, and made a comment about how he never really grew out of that middle school look. He didn't tell me more, but eventually his secretary filled me in. Apparently he walked into his office and asked her to come in. She totally changed her tone and said, "Yes, I'm here for an interview." He told her the interview ended a minute ago. Not the manager, just witnessed the firing. The delivery boy answered his personal cell phone with, "Tone is abortion clinic. You make M, we scrape M, in front of customers, and our very religious boss." It went over well. Supervisor in a call center. We worked with EBT cards. All calls are recorded. All agents know this because we have them listen to enough of them on one-on-ones. This girl got in an argument with a caller and told him, "Maybe you should get a job and get off food stamps." That wasn't even the worst part of the call, just the part I can quote verbatim. There was also a rant accusing him of being personally responsible for the Atlantic slave trade. My manager was like, "It really can't be that bad." No, dude. Listen to the call. She was fired. In auto sales, one of our salesmen always seemed to be up to something. Between all lying to customers, drug abuse and constant fighting at home, he was impossible to manage. Unfortunately, he was the type that gave the rest of us a bad name. Eventually he got into it with our GSM about several issues, and his go-to was to start making fun of our GSM's handicapped son. I had so much respect for our GSM. He took him in an office, told him he was terminated, and walked out, even though I know inside he was boiling with rage. Glad he's gone. .com boom, maybe 1999? Tech startup, hustlin' pixels. Massive expansion, basically hiring anyone on the spot. Unsure how this wanker made it through, because he was a man of many red flags, but he shows up for his second day in overalls. Most people were snappily dressed. Sits down, unpacks his rather large duffel, pulls out a legit Rambo knife and 2 huge dumbbells. Proceeds to start working his biceps at his desk, with the knife in his teeth. Cops escorted him out. Punching his supervisor, and then making a run for it. He had permanent residence pending, and wound up deported. Must have pretty bad anger management issues to throw your whole life away over not wanting to switch departments for a week. I used to manage a restaurant. My hosts were in charge of taking to-go orders, but I couldn't have them away from the host stand to get them ready, so I had them grab a server that wasn't really busy and have them do it. On his second day, my host came to me and said, "I asked the new guy to grab the to-go order for me, and he told me that it's not his ducking job." It was the end of the shift, and everyone was putting chairs up, so instead of singling him out, I just pulled everyone together and said, "Hey, if they ask you to get a to-go order, ducking do it. They aren't asking you because they are lazy, they are asking you because I've told them to ask you." After my little speech, he turns around and starts slamming chairs around. Nope. Bitch. You're gone. You don't get to cuss out my 17-year-old hostess and slam shit around on your second day. But what day could you throw a tantrum? Once you've shown your worth. I've had servers have meltdowns, but I knew they were good at their job, and that this wasn't their typical disposition. If you can't eat shit for a few days without losing your shit, then you'll lose your shit all the time. I wasn't his manager, but at a company that I used to work for, they made the mistake of firing a system administrator before disabling his access. He apparently had known it was coming for quite a while, because he had scripts written to change the local admin logins on a number of our servers, and then promptly shut them down. We were able to get them back up and restore root access with domain admin credentials or snapshots. But imagine 76 mission critical production servers going down at once on a Friday at 3 PM. That was a really long weekend. I once had an employee Snapchatting as he drove an ambulance with a crew member and patient in the back, through an intersection during a red light. I wasn't the manager, but watched the whole thing happen. A few years ago I worked at a restaurant, and we had kind of an annoying new hire. One of those, "I'm too good for this" types. It was this kid's first job, and first day out of training. One of his tables was a family with 2 small children, who were being obnoxious, but hey, it's a family restaurant, that's expected. While walking away from the table, he muttered something along the lines of, "Shut up, you're ducking kids." Except he didn't actually mutter, he spoke at a normal volume. The mother overheard and was not pleased. He was sent home and invited to not return. My construction company was building a new addition on a hospital. One morning, the president of the hospital called to inform me that he had just watched one of our laborers smoke crack in his truck while on break. Went to the job site, talked to the kid. He said, "Yeah, I was, but I waited till break time. You aren't supposed to drive your personal vehicle to the job site for liability reasons. Oh yeah, and you're not supposed to smoke crack. Even on break." We've had some winners over the years, but that kid took the cake. I was part of a group of IT contractors together for a large international project. The client would get us apartments to live in at each implementation site for 6 to 12 months. A member of my team got into a disagreement with the CTO when he came to visit our site, which resulted in her screaming personal attacks at him in the hallway when he tried to step outside to de-escalate the argument. She was fired on the spot, but then proceeded to go back to the apartment provided by the company and completely wreck it. The site was in the middle of the desert, and she had opened all of the windows/doors, turned the AC on max, stopped all of the drains and turned the water on, threw red nail polish all over the bathroom. It was the most extreme breakdown in a professional environment I'd ever seen.